Somewhere in America right now, someone is pulling a Cold War pistol out of a shoebox in their attic, and they have absolutely no idea that what they are holding is not just an old gun. It is a piece of the most dangerous 50 years in human history, a relic from the era when two superpowers pointed nuclear weapons at each other and the men in the shadows carried these exact pistols. Some of those guns are sitting in estates right now, priced at $200. In 10 years, they will not be available at any price. These are the 10 Cold War pistols you should never, ever sell. Number 10. The Walther P-38 West German Bundeswehr issue, post-1957 production. Most people know the Walther P-38 as the pistol that replaced the Luger in German military service during World War II. What most people do not know is that the story does not end there. Not even close. When West Germany was permitted to rearm in 1956 and establish the Bundeswehr, the new federal German army needed a service pistol. The Americans had the Colt 1911, the British had the Browning High Power, West Germany went back to the P-38. And the reason that decision matters to collectors today is everything. The post-1957 Bundeswehr P-38s were produced by Walther in Ulm under a new contract, and they carry markings that tell the entire story of West German rearmament on the side of the slide. The eagle-proof marks, the Bundeswehr acceptance stamps, and the specific date codes are not just bureaucratic details. They are a documented record of a nation rebuilding its military identity under the shadow of Soviet tanks positioned 100 miles to the east. Here is the technical detail that separates serious collectors from casual owners. The Cold War Bundeswehr P-38 uses a double-action and single-action trigger system with an aluminum alloy frame, a combination that was genuinely advanced for its era. You could carry it hammered down with a round chambered and fire that first shot through a long, deliberate double-action pull. Every subsequent shot fired in single action. In 1957, that was not standard, that was sophisticated. The proof marks on these pistols are the entire ballgame for value. An unmarked P-38 is a shooter. A fully marked, documented Bundeswehr contract example with matching numbers is a collector piece from the front line of the Cold War. A decade ago, these were $300 guns at gun shows. Today, clean Bundeswehr contract examples with correct markings are selling for $800 to $1,500. The trajectory has not flattened. It is steepening. Number 9. The FN Browning High Power Cold War military contract production. John Moses Browning designed the high power in the 1920s and did not live to see it go into production. Fabrique Nationale in Belgium finished the design after his death and introduced it in 1935. What followed was one of the most extraordinary adoption records in firearms history. During the Cold War, the Browning High Power was not carried by one army, it was carried by dozens. SAS operators from Britain carried it in every theater, from the Falklands to Northern Ireland. Israeli paratroopers carried it, Australian SAS carried it, Canadian forces carried it, nationalist Chinese forces carried it. Both sides in conflicts across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia carried it simultaneously, often in the same engagement, because both sides had purchased Fabrique Nationale contracts. That is the pistol's Cold War legacy, and it is unlike anything else on this list. The technical case for the high power's dominance is straightforward. 13 rounds of 9mm in a single-stack magazine was the highest capacity service pistol on Earth for most of its service life. The locked breech, tilting barrel system that Browning developed is so mechanically sound that virtually every modern service pistol, from the Glock to the Beretta M9, traces its operating principles directly to this gun. The collector hierarchy within Cold War high powers is where the real money lives. British military marked examples, particularly those with SAS unit markings or documented special forces provenance, are the crown jewels. Israeli contract guns with Hebrew acceptance stamps carry their own premium. Canadian military marked examples are scarcer than most collectors realize. Standard Cold War military contract high powers were $600 guns 5 years ago. British marked examples are now bringing $1,200 to $2,000. Documented special forces provenance pushes that number into territory that surprises people every single time one comes to auction. Number 8. The Colt Commander .45 ACP early aluminum frame pre-1970 production. Everyone in the firearms world knows the Colt 1911. It is arguably the most written about, most analyzed, most celebrated pistol in American history. But the gun that serious Cold War collectors are chasing right now is not the full-size government model. It is the Commander, and specifically the early aluminum frame Commander that Colt introduced in 1950. Here's why that distinction matters enormously. When the United States military asked Colt to develop a lighter, more compact version of the 1911 for officers, pilots, and support personnel who needed a sidearm without the full weight of the government model, Colt did something genuinely innovative. They built the Commander frame from aircraft-grade aluminum alloy, reducing the weight of the pistol by nearly 7 ounces compared to the standard steel frame. In 1950, that was remarkable engineering. The pre-1970 aluminum frame Commanders were built to a standard of fit and finish that Colt's later production never consistently matched. The frame-to-slide fit on an early Commander is something you can feel the moment you pick one up. There is no wobble, no play, no slop. The tolerances are tight in the way that hand-fitted parts are tight, not machine tight, but human tight. CIA officers carried Commanders throughout the Cold War. Case officers running operations behind the Iron Curtain, stationed in Vienna, Berlin, and Istanbul, chose the Commander specifically because it was lighter and more concealable than the government model while firing the same cartridge. That operational history is baked into every one of these guns. Early aluminum frame Commanders in original unmodified condition were $400 to $600 pistols a decade ago. Today, the market has corrected sharply. Clean pre-1970 examples are bringing $1,200 to $2,000. Find one with any documented agency or military provenance, and the number climbs well beyond that. Number 7. The Czech CZ75, first generation, pre-1980 production. There is a deep irony at the heart of the CZ75 story, and it is the kind of irony that only the Cold War could produce. In 1975, Czechoslovakia, a Warsaw Pact nation firmly inside the Soviet sphere of influence, introduced a pistol so technically advanced, so mechanically superior to anything the Soviet Union was issuing its own troops, that the Soviets refused to allow it to be exported to Warsaw Pact countries. They were embarrassed by it, so the CZ75 went west instead, legally exported to the capitalist world, while the communist armies that surrounded the factory that built it were forbidden from carrying it. That story alone makes it one of the most fascinating Cold War artifacts in existence. The technical achievement that caused that embarrassment is real, and it is significant. The CZ75 uses a frame-mounted safety and a double-action and single-action trigger system built around a slide that rides inside the frame rails rather than outside them. That single design decision, rails on the inside rather than the outside, creates a longer bearing surface between frame and slide, which produces a level of inherent accuracy that most contemporary service pistols simply could not match. First generation CZ75s, those produced before 1980, have specific features that later production changed or eliminated. The short dust cover, the non-captured recoil spring, the smooth trigger guard, and the specific proof marks of the Uhersky Broad factory in its early production configuration are the details that separate a first generation from everything that followed. These pistols were made behind the Iron Curtain, and getting correctly documented, verified first generation examples into American collections has always been difficult. That difficulty is exactly what drives the premium. First generation CZ75s were undervalued for years. Informed collectors have been correcting that quietly and deliberately. Clean, verified pre-1980 examples are now bringing $1,500 to $3,000 from buyers who understand exactly what they're holding. Number 6. The Soviet Makarov PM, East German DDR production. The Makarov PM is the pistol that armed the other side of the Cold War. Every KGB officer carried one. Every East German Stasi agent carried one. Every Soviet military officer from 1951 until the collapse of the Soviet Union carried one. It is the sidearm of the entire communist bloc, and it deserves to be understood on its own technical terms, not dismissed simply because of what it represented politically. Nikolai Makarov's design was a direct response to a Soviet military requirement for a simpler, more reliable, more easily maintained service pistol than the aging Tokarev TT-33. What he produced was a straight blowback pistol chambered in a cartridge he helped develop, the 9x18mm Makarov round, specifically chosen because its operating pressure was low enough to allow a blowback action without a locked breech. The genius of that decision is often overlooked. A blowback pistol has fewer moving parts than a locked breech design. Fewer moving parts means fewer failure points. In the conditions Soviet and Warsaw Pact troops were expected to operate in, from the Arctic cold of Siberia to the desert heat of Afghanistan, that mechanical simplicity was not a compromise. It was a deliberate and intelligent engineering priority. Now here is where East German production separates itself from the crowd and separates itself sharply. The Deutsche Demokratische Republik, the DDR, produced Makarovs at the Ernst Thälmann factory in Seoul to a manufacturing standard that most Soviet bloc production never matched. East German Makarovs have a quality of fit, finish, and bluing that reflects the German industrial tradition, even when the politics were Soviet. The proof marks, the factory codes, and the documented military or Stasi issue markings on DDR Makarovs are the details that drive collector value above every other Makarov variant. A standard Soviet Makarov is a $200 gun. A clean East German DDR example with correct military markings is now bringing $600 to $1,200, and the value gap is widening every year as collectors figure out exactly what they have been walking past. Number 5, the Smith & Wesson Model 39 first generation. In 1954, the United States military issued a request. They wanted a new service pistol, double action trigger, aluminum frame, 9mm, high capacity. Smith & Wesson answered that request with the Model 39, and in doing so, they built something that changed American handgun history permanently. The military never adopted it. The Navy SEALs did. That is the pivot point in the Model 39 story. The United States Navy commissioned a specialized suppressed variant of the Model 39 for SEAL teams operating in Vietnam, a pistol designated the Mark 22 Mod 0 and nicknamed the Hush Puppy. The mission was specific: silence enemy sentries and guard dogs during reconnaissance operations without alerting surrounding forces. The Hush Puppy used a threaded barrel, a slide lock to prevent the action from cycling and generating mechanical noise, and a suppressor developed specifically for the platform. The documented operational use of the Model 39 by Navy SEAL teams during the Vietnam War era gave this pistol a Cold War combat pedigree that no amount of marketing can manufacture. It happened. It is in the historical record, and it has been steadily pushing collector interest in first-generation Model 39s upward for years. The first-generation guns, those produced before Smith & Wesson, revised the design into the Model 59 series in the early 1970s, have specific dimensional and finish characteristics that experienced collectors can identify immediately. The original smooth trigger guard, the specific aluminum frame dimensions, and the early serial number range are the markers. First-generation Model 39s were passing through gun shows at $300 not long ago. Today, clean original examples are bringing $700 to $1,400. Documented Hush Puppy variants with correct military markings are a different conversation entirely, and that conversation starts at several $1,000s and goes up from there. Number 4, the Sig Sauer P210 Swiss military issue. There are accurate pistols, and then there is the Sig P210. Those are two separate categories, and it is important to understand why. Switzerland adopted the P210 as its standard military sidearm in 1949 and carried it in active service for over 50 years. That service record alone is remarkable, but the reason the Swiss military stayed with the P210 for 5 decades while every other NATO nation was cycling through new service pistol contracts is the same reason serious collectors are paying extraordinary prices for Swiss military issue examples today. The P210 is built to a tolerance standard that no production pistol before or since has consistently matched at scale. The slide rides inside the frame just as the CZ75 does, but the P210 takes that concept to a level of precision that requires hand fitting to achieve. The barrel to slide fit, the slide to frame fit, and the trigger mechanism on a correctly timed P210 produce accuracy figures that competitive shooters have used to win international championships for decades. Swiss military-issue P210s carry specific proof marks, military acceptance stamps, and grip panel variations that civilian commercial examples do not have. The documented Swiss Army service history on these pistols is the collector premium, because you are not just buying accuracy, you are buying 50 years of Cold War Swiss military history in a country that sat at the precise geographic center of the potential NATO and Warsaw Pact collision. Civilian P210s were never inexpensive, but Swiss military issue examples have moved into a different market entirely. Correct military marked examples in original condition are bringing $3,000 to $6,000. Match grade variants with documented competition history push that number considerably higher. If you have a Swiss military P210 sitting in your safe and you have been thinking about selling it, close the safe, walk away, come back in 5 years and thank yourself. Number 3, the Colt Python .357 Magnum CIA and FBI contract variants. The Colt Python is already one of the most valuable production revolvers in America. But there is a chapter of the Python story that does not get told often enough, and it lives in the government contract variants that armed American intelligence and federal law enforcement throughout the Cold War. The FBI issued Pythons to special agents during the 1960s. The CIA's Office of Security carried them. The Secret Service carried them, and these were not standard production guns pulled off a shelf. They were contract specification pistols with documented order numbers, specific configuration requirements, and in some cases, agency markings that collectors are now hunting aggressively. Here is what that provenance actually means. You are not just holding one of the finest revolvers ever built in America, you are holding the specific gun that sat in a specific holster on a specific agent during the most dangerous intelligence war in human history. That context does not reduce the mechanical value of the Python, it multiplies it. A clean pre-1969 Python starts at $2,000 to $3,000. A documented federal contract example is not priced on that baseline, it is priced on provenance. And if you have one with agency paperwork or armory markings, do not sell it without a specialist appraisal first. Number 2, the Soviet Stechkin APS, full automatic pistol. Most people who hear the words full automatic pistol assume that is a novelty, a range toy, something designed to empty a magazine as fast as mechanically possible while hitting nothing in particular. The Stechkin APS is not that gun. It is something far more interesting and far more historically significant than that dismissal suggests. The Soviets developed the Stechkin APS in 1951 as a personal defense weapon for artillery crews, vehicle commanders, and special operations personnel who needed more firepower than a standard pistol but could not practically carry a full-sized rifle or submachine gun. The solution was elegant and slightly terrifying. A 20-round detachable magazine of 9x18mm Makarov ammunition, a select fire mechanism offering single-shot or full automatic fire at a cyclical rate of approximately 700 rounds per minute, and a shoulder stock that doubled as a holster, converting the pistol into a short carbine configuration in a matter of seconds. In automatic fire with the stock attached, a trained shooter could deliver accurate bursts at close range with a weapon that concealed as a holstered pistol. That capability did not go unnoticed. KGB Special Operations units carried the Stechkin extensively throughout the Cold War. Soviet Spetsnaz units used them. They appeared in Afghanistan, they appeared in Angola, they appeared in every proxy conflict the Soviets were running across 3 continents. Here's the collector reality in the United States. The Stechkin APS falls under the National Firearms Act as a machine gun. Legally transferable pre-1986 examples exist in the American registry, and the number is small, permanently and irreversibly small. The Hughes Amendment closed the machine gun registry in 1986. Not one additional transferable Stechkin will ever legally enter the American collector market. Every registered example that exists today is all there will ever be. The transferable Stechkin market reflects that reality. Documented correct examples with matching stocks are selling for $10,000 to $25,000, and the price curve shows no sign of reversing. It never will. The supply is fixed. The historical interest is growing. That mathematical reality only moves in one direction. Number 1. The Walther PPK, East German Stasi issue. We started this list with a West German pistol. We end it with its mirror image from the other side of the wall. And the story of the East German Stasi PPK is in many ways the story of the entire Cold War compressed into a single object you can hold in one hand. Most people know the Walther PPK as James Bond's pistol. What they do not fully understand is why Ian Fleming chose it for Bond in the first place, and that reason points directly to what makes the Stasi issue variants so historically extraordinary. The PPK was the preferred sidearm of European intelligence and police services for decades before Fleming ever put it in Bond's holster, because it was the most concealable, most reliable, double-action, semi-automatic pistol available in a package small enough to disappear under a suit jacket. Intelligence officers chose it not because a novelist told them to. Ian Fleming chose it for Bond because intelligence officers were already carrying it. The East German Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, the Ministry for State Security, universally known as the Stasi, was the most comprehensive and most ruthless domestic intelligence apparatus the Cold War produced. At its peak, the Stasi employed one full-time officer for approximately every 63 East German citizens. It ran a network of informal informants that touched virtually every workplace, neighborhood, and family in the country. And its officers carried PPKs. The East German PPK variants produced for Stasi issue have specific characteristics that distinguish them from commercial West German production and from Soviet bloc copies. The Stasi acceptance markings, the specific proof stamps of East German manufacture, the documented armory markings, and in some cases, the individual officer assignment records that survived the collapse of the DDR in 1989 are the provenance details that make these pistols historically irreplaceable. When the Berlin Wall fell in November of 1989 and the Stasi headquarters in East Berlin was stormed by East German citizens, the agency had been shredding documents around the clock for days. Files were destroyed, records were burned, but the guns did not all disappear. Some were decommissioned through proper channels, some entered the surplus market, some passed through military and police auctions, and every one of them carried its history silently in the proof marks stamped into the steel decades earlier. Here's what the market understands that most sellers do not. A standard commercial West German PPK is a $500 to $800 pistol, depending on condition. An East German Stasi issue example with correct markings, documented armory records, and verified chain of custody from DDR State Service is a fundamentally different object. It is not a pistol with a premium. It is a primary historical document of the Cold War's darkest domestic chapter that happens to also be a pistol. Correctly documented Stasi issue PPKs are bringing $1,500 to $4,000 at specialized auction, and the market is still discovering them. Most of the people who have them do not fully understand what they own. The collectors who do understand are buying quietly, holding patiently, and watching the value of the Cold War's most sinister sidearm climb year after year. That is why it sits at number 1 on this list. Not because it is the rarest gun here, not because it is mechanically the most sophisticated, but because no other pistol on this list carries the weight of history more completely, more chillingly, or more permanently than a PPK that spent the Cold War in the holster of a Stasi officer in East Berlin. The Cold War ended, the wall came down. But the history stamped into these pistols does not come down with it. That is the list. 10 Cold War pistols that are quietly becoming some of the most historically significant and financially valuable firearms in the American collector market. The Walther P38 Bundeswehr issue, the FN Browning high-power military contract, the Colt Commander early aluminum frame, the CZ-75 first generation, the East German Makarov DDR production, the Smith & Wesson Model 39, the SIG P210 Swiss military issue, the Colt Python federal contract variants, the Soviet Steshkin APS, and the East German Stasi PPK. Every single one of them is a direct artifact from the 50 years when the world came closest to ending, and every single one of them is worth more than most people who own them realize. If you have any of these in your safe, get them appraised by someone who specializes in Cold War military and intelligence firearms before you make any decisions. The difference between what a general dealer tells you and what an informed collector pays can be staggering. Hit the like button if this list taught you something you did not know before. Subscribe because we go this deep every single week. And drop in the comments the one Cold War pistol you would never sell no matter what someone offered you. I read every single one. See you in the next video. And whatever you do, do not sell before you watch it.